Okay, so imagine a cure for insanity, but a cure so brutal, so radical, that it was actually more terrifying than the madness it was supposed to treat. This is the story of a doctor who was hailed as a hero, a pioneer, but whose scalpel left a trail of death and mutilation, all in the name of progress. We're going to dive into the truly tragic tale of Dr. Henry A. Cotton.
You know, back in the early 1920s, you couldn't pick up a paper like the New York Times without hearing about the miracles supposedly happening at Trenton State Hospital. And Dr. Henry A. Cotton, well, he wasn't just some psychiatrist. He was a visionary, a trailblazer, who was finally bringing real science and surgery into the dark, scary world of the asylum. For a lot of people, he was the very definition of hope.
And that's the question, isn't it? It seems simple, but the answer is just incredibly dark. Because as we're about to see, the price for all that high hope was paid in blood and bone and organs by thousands of patients who never had a choice in the matter. So to really get how things went so disastrously wrong, we have to understand the man himself. Because Henry Cotton didn't start out as this monster. He actually began his career as a reformer, someone people saw as one of the most promising medical minds of his entire generation. I mean, look at this pedigree. It was absolutely impeccable. He studied under the giants of psychiatry, guys like Kraepelin and Alzheimer. He was the protege of the most influential American psychiatrist at the time, Adolf Meyer. So when he took over Trenton State Hospital at just 30 years old, he came in and started shaking things up. He got rid of the shackles, the chains, he brought in occupational therapy. He treated patients with a dignity they just weren't getting anywhere else. He was a true progressive. So, how does a reformer become a butcher? Well, it all starts with an idea, a theory that at the time seemed not just possible, but brilliantly scientific. It's a classic case of a plausible idea that just goes horribly, horribly wrong. And this was the theory that completely captured Cotton's imagination. See, we were in the age of germs. People were obsessed with the new science of bacteriology. So this idea that a hidden little pocket of infection could poison your whole body, it seemed like a massive breakthrough. It was used to explain everything from arthritis to heart disease, and Cotton just took it one step further and asked, what if it also explains madness? And the logic he followed was just devastatingly simple. You can see how seductive it was. Step 1, hidden germs are lurking in places like your teeth and tonsils. Step 2, those germs pump out toxins into your blood. Step 3, those toxins travel to your brain, poisoning it and causing insanity. And the final, terrible step, the only way to cure it is with surgery. To save the mind, you had to physically cut the rot out of the body. So, armed with this theory, Cotton completely transforms Trenton State Hospital. It went from a place of recovery to, well, to an operating theater. He launched a full-scale surgical assault on his patients, absolutely convinced he was performing a cure for the soul itself. He started with the teeth. He'd pull every single one, whether they were healthy or not. If that didn't work, he moved on to tonsils and sinuses. Still no cure? He just went deeper. Spleens, stomachs, gallbladders, they all came out. He became obsessed with the colon, calling it a cesspool of toxins. And in this relentless hunt, he even removed cervixes, ovaries, and testicles. Literally no part of the body was safe from his scalpel. And the results he was reporting? They sounded like miracles. Cotton claimed an 85% cure rate. I mean, that was a number totally unheard of in psychiatry back then. It made him an international celebrity. Desperate families flocked to Trenton, hoping for his amazing wonder cure. But here's the horrifying reality that was hidden behind all those glowing headlines. While he claimed to be curing 85% of his patients, the truth is that his surgeries were killing up to 45% of them. Remember, this was before antibiotics. This kind of aggressive, invasive surgery was often just a death sentence. You know, statistics can start to feel a little numbing after a while. So let's just focus on one of the hundreds of lives that were destroyed. Margaret Fisher. She was the daughter of Irving Fisher, one of the most famous economists in America. When she was diagnosed with schizophrenia, her very well-connected, highly educated father sent her to Dr. Cotton, believing he was choosing the most modern, scientific care you could possibly get. This timeline is just a tragedy in 5 acts. March, she arrives. By August, Cotton has removed part of her cervix. In September, he injects her with some experimental serum. By October, his so-called treatments have given her a massive infection, and on November 7th, Margaret Fisher is dead. Not from her mental illness, but from the cure. Now, you'd think a disaster on this scale would have been stopped, right? The really shocking part of this whole story is that the scientific evidence to debunk Cotton, it existed.
There were people who knew the truth, but the system, the profession itself, it just failed to act.
See, a group of his peers were pretty skeptical of these incredible claims. So, led by a bacteriologist named Nicholas Kopoloff and a psychiatrist, Clarence Chaney, they decided to do something really revolutionary for the time. They put his theory to a proper, rigorous scientific test.
And what they found was absolutely damning. They took a group of patients, gave half of them cotton surgical treatments, and had a control group that got no surgery at all. And the result? The group that got surgery actually did worse. 53% of the no-surgery group improved on their own, compared to only 47% of the surgical group. The cure wasn't just useless, it was actively harmful.
And this is the crucial line, right here in their own words. The science was clear. The data was undeniable. Cotton's entire theory was just wrong. This should have been the end of the story. But unbelievably, it wasn't. Get this. Cotton's own mentor, Adolf Meyer, sent another doctor, Phyllis Greenacre, to investigate. And she found a hospital in total chaos. The patient records were a mess, the data didn't add up, and none of Cotton's claims could actually be verified. But her devastating report, it was buried, suppressed by Meyer, probably to protect his own reputation and his protégés, and so the slaughter was allowed to continue.
So with the scientific community pretty much looking the other way, Henry Cotton's reign of terror at Trenton went on for years, and it left behind a legacy of death and just unimaginable suffering that even reached into his own family.
When Cotton died in 1933, the obituaries praised him as a hero. And his barbaric practices, they didn't die with him. The hospital kept pulling patients' teeth all the way into the late 1950s. And in the most tragic irony of all, Cotton actually subjected his own 2 sons to his preventative treatment, having all of their teeth removed. Both of them later took their own lives. It's really easy to look back on all this as just some bizarre, gruesome horror story from a primitive past. But the core ideas that drove Dr. Cotton, this belief that some hidden internal poison is the root of all our problems, well, those ideas are still very much with us today.
I mean, just look at the language. What was once called auto-intoxication is now sold to us as detoxification. The fear of focal sepsis has been replaced with the modern urge for cleansing the body. And while surgeons aren't removing colons to cure psychosis anymore, the pseudo-scientific practice of colonic irrigation is thriving in the alternative wellness world. The echo is just unmistakable. And that leaves us with this final, really unsettling question. Henry Cotton saw himself as a pioneer, a man of science, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in medicine. But to his victims, he was a monster. And in our own time, with new, radical treatments emerging every day, the line between a breakthrough and a catastrophe can be terrifyingly thin. It really forces us to ask, how do we know who to trust?